So do you have a personal definition of interpretation, musical interpretation? What does interpretation mean for you? What's the difference in different interpretations of pieces of music for you?
I think the most thrilling thing is that while we are listening to pieces which are, let's say, 300-400 years old, and we've heard them for 100 times on CDs, in live concerts, why do we go again to a concert with the same piece we know from recordings, we know from CDs? Why do we do that? Mm-hmm. And I'm convinced that there is the possibility that when you go to a concert and you do this because you have the chance that in this moment, and only in this moment, on this day, with those people on stage, with those people in the audience, that there is a unique possibility to hear it completely new. It's a little bit like also Nicolas Hanoncourt said when we rehearsed with our orchestra, try to invent the music in a completely new, perhaps like jazz improvisation. I think I'm not a very good improvisation musician, but I think we can, even with written music, play like it would grow just in the moment we play it. And I think this is the only reason why people go to concerts for pieces they know and they hear lots of times before, but they have the chance to hear it completely new at this special moment. And this is what is interpretation for me, because it's not every time, not everything is planned. There has to be the possibility to do something which is not rehearsed, which is not planned, which a kind of ritardando, a kind of dynamic idea, which you do just because you feel it now at the moment. And this can be the magic moments of concerts. And this is the reason why we do also, as classical musicians, why we do concerts, why we have audience, because there is the chance. It not always happens like this, but in best case, these are the best moments for me, and I'm convinced also for audience.
Mm-hmm. And where does the difference? Where does the idea of the moment come from? Is it something that's something to do with preparation, or is it only happening in a moment? Where does the inspiration come from?
Yeah, I think it's very important to be perfectly prepared in a technical way. You have to know in a technical way what you have to play, where you are together with the strings, where you are together with the flute. The preparation about these technical things is very, very important, because only if you are prepared in a perfect way like this, you have a kind of, you can be free at the moment. If you have to think about, is it F or F sharp? There will be no space in the moment for having magic moments for the interpretation, for the musical sense, for the story you want to tell. If you have to think about F or F sharp, piano or mezzo piano, all those things have to be cleared before you go on stage in front of the audience. So I try to prepare perfectly in a technical way, in a way of where do I have to play with which colleague, and perhaps also to know a little bit about the background of the pieces. This is work which has to be made before you go on stage and play for people.
But this is not normal anyway?
It should be normal, but how can I say? Sometimes it's well prepared and then it's played well prepared, but you hear black dots on white paper, and nobody cares about black dots on white paper. People cares, and music is about magic, about connection between people on stage and people in the hall. Nobody cares about black dots on white paper, but in that moment where those black dots are transformed into a story, into a moment where someone is starting to cry, to laugh, or just to, if you see that there is someone doing like this with the leg, there is connection. No WLAN, no Bluetooth, nothing like this, no digital things. It's a kind of magic connection, and this is not because of black dots on white paper. This is because of human beings are interpreting those black dots on white paper. And I think that the directest way is to try to be in the moment. It's a very big idea, because it's not only about music. I think it's about whole life. And I am working on that, but I'm not able to do it yet. Or I just have some moments where I have the feeling, now I was in the moment. Yeah, I lived in the moment, and these are very special and very beautiful and very good feeling moments. And for me also, in playing music, these are the most catching moments where I remember, that's the reason why I started to play the clarinet, and why I started to be infected by the magic of music.
And then you said you want to tell a story.
Yes.
Where does that story come from, and how concrete is this story?
The story can be. I'm only talking about my opinion.
Of course.
But I think you can have the same piece, and my story is a completely different one that compared with the story the listeners in the hall imagine. So it's like a book. A book is more. In a book, there is much more space for interpretation compared, for example, to a movie. In a movie, you see the actors, you hear perhaps some soundtracks, some film music, you see the setting, the landscape. But if you read the book, the same story, book, movie, if you read the book, you have to imagine by yourself how could it look like? How could this man in the book look like? How could this setting described in the book look like? And for me, it's a little bit, in music, it's the same. And that's fascinating, because it can be, if I play Mozart clarinet concerto, that during second movement, someone, just a very simple example. If I play this famous theme of second movement Mozart clarinet concerto, it could be that I'm thinking about the sunrise and you are thinking about the sunset. Both is true. I'm convinced both is true. If you would tell me, you think during I play this famous melody, you think about highway with traffic jam, I wouldn't understand, and I don't think that lots of people would think about the highway with the traffic jam. But if one thinks about the sea and the second thinks about the mountains, both is true. And isn't this fascinating. Yeah, I think there is no truth.
Yeah.
It's also here. I'm convinced in whole life there is not one truth. You have to build your own point of view, and there are different points of view. And on the backside of the moon, how does the moon look like on the backside? Mm-hmm. So that's what about music and interpretation is for me. That if you imagine a sunset and I'm thinking about a sunrise, both is true.
Mm-hmm. I talked about this with a lot of musicians, and some of the musicians, as we also know from conductors, have very concrete ideas and stories and fantasies about this piece of music, like Nicolas Harnoncourt. Others haven't got it. Others just have sometimes even feelings or can't even talk about it concretely. What is your
preference,
or what is your way of feeling and thinking while you perform or while you also prepare a piece of music? Have you got at least sometimes clear pictures and stories in the back of your mind?
Yeah, both things are okay for me. You mentioned Nicolas Harnoncourt, and he really had very concrete stories, pictures he tried to show us, and this was great. But I think he wouldn't have any problems if I tried to paint his picture, and if I sometimes do a little bit more red because I felt it a little bit more red here. But the picture it helped to have his pictures and his stories. My personal way is my most magic moments during playing were when I stopped thinking. Mm-hmm. There were moments when I was well prepared, very well prepared. I didn't think about which picture do I want to play, which atmosphere do I want to create. I didn't have to think at the moment when I was playing. It was just like it was now, and it was good. And this for me is the ideal situation.
Mm-hmm. But to be able to do this in a convincing way, is there at some point in the preparation or in getting to know this piece where you have to go through concrete pictures?
Absolutely.
And then maybe forget about them or whatever, but do you have to internalize this in a concrete way?
Absolutely. I come back to this example from Mozart Clarinet Concerto. We as clarinetists play very often this piece. Of course, it's a masterpiece and I love it. My experience was, especially for, let's talk about the exposition of the first movement. If we have to play it very often, because also if you do auditions, it's always this exposition which we have to play. And there is a point you go to, you have your teacher at the university, you have your own opinion and your own way what this should be, and you go to master classes, and you have at a certain point 20 suggestions for 4 bars. And if you look to my music, I have my even if I play from memory, but I have my sheet music at home. And if I look to this, sometimes I see for really almost every bar 3 versions with articulation, with ideas, with dynamics. And I think it's so important to go this way through, to have these impressions from lots of teachers, from lots of people who give you inspirations, give you suggestions how you could do. But at the end, if you go this sometimes very hard way through, at the end, my experience was it was important to go through this, but at the end I had to reach a point where I played again like I would see it the first time, and like I would play a children's song. And it wouldn't be possible without going through those many suggestions, inspirations, pictures which teachers or people gave to me. But at the end, after all of these ideas, you have to get, for me, I have to get to a point where I can play it like I would see it the first time, and I should play it like a children's song. Then it feels very natural for me.
It's a little bit like the playing tennis. You have to work on all the little details.
Probably.
But when you play a game, you just...
Probably I am a very bad tennis player.
Yeah, me too. But, yeah. And also the same with football. I mean, you do, you do this UFB trainings, work with the football trainers, and so they also do a lot of preparation and a lot of training. But then in the end, it has to just develop without thinking too much. Huh?
We are human beings, and football players are human beings, tennis players are human beings, and musicians are human beings, and we are no robots. And that's the good message. It will be not possible to create a robot who will be able to play music like a human being. And even in 1,000 years, it will not be possible. They can perhaps do a very perfect kind of playing black dots on white paper, but they cannot, I'm convinced they cannot. If an orchestra, 150 people, do one transition, like, and this downbeat comes together, completely together, because 150 people feel it completely together. This is, these are the moments where we live for. And of course it depends on the conductor and on the connection between the musicians. But if really one transition works like this and everyone feels exactly this one downbeat, when is it? This is magic. And robots will not be able to do this.
Yeah, and this is where the power is, where we can get
absolutely
so much energy from it.
And where you feel connected with 149 people next to you. This is wow.
This is what we talked before. The connection with other people gives you energy. And it is your way of getting involved with pieces of music and preparing it and maybe doing research, even though these are pieces of music that are written 200-300 years ago. How is your connection to nowadays, to the nowadays society, to nowadays developments, to nowadays problems? Is there any connection, or is this your profession, and then you deal with the other problems or challenges of our times, or is there any connection to you?
Absolutely. The first thing during your question I was thinking about was we played all 9 Beethoven symphonies with Andres Nelsons just before this Corona fermata we had now, and for me the most important and most connected topic of Beethoven's music was this freedom thing, and now we really, and it was so crazy because right after we played, I think it was his fifth symphony, there was this lockdown, and all parts of our society were locked down, and we had to stay at home, and it was absolutely opposite of freedom. But we just played bam bam bim bam 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 bam, and it was so libertà. This big dream of humans to be free, and then we were in the Corona situation. We weren't free anymore. So this is a very simple example, but this was absolutely contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
It was here now. The missing chance to be free for a short time. And when Beethoven wrote this music, I think the theme and the topic of freedom was at this time very important and very deep in a deep wish of humans, and it's not even less today. So why shouldn't this be modern now? It's very modern.
I mean, we live in a time where we are so lucky to be relatively free, relatively healthy, relatively fed, well fed, and we are really, I mean, we live like better than kings 300 years ago. So this is, I think, also one reason why art and music is not, it has got its difficulties to reach people in the moment, because there are not so many problems that are so concrete and present. But this lockdown time was, of course, one where we were reminded of those problems which are washed away with our rich life.
It was a very important experience for also for me personally. And I think freedom, in a way, Beethoven was thinking about it, has nothing to do with eating enough, and it's a very, it's much more. It's much more. It's a global, deeply human wish and fantasy, and it's also, even if we have enough to eat, if we are really here in Austria and in Middle Europe and in Western countries, we are, like you said, we are living like kings. But let's think about if we are free, really free, if we have the possibility to be free, but are we free? Or are we sometimes do people and do certain groups try to bring us to manipulate us? Yeah, I don't know, but let's think about it. Are we free? Can music help us to be free, or to have a smell of freedom, to get a little fiction about what is it about being really free?
I'm convinced this is, I mean, those days when Beethoven lived, there was real suppression sometimes, yeah, and real everyday fight of being free. Nowadays, it's not so obvious anymore.
Absolutely.
And it's even, from my opinion, it's even more important to involve with art and nature and music, and to be free inside, because this is where we probably have our problems nowadays. I mean, we can travel everywhere if there is no lockdown, and so we've got this kind of freedom. But inside,
Yes, that's what
and this is where art and nature and connections to other people, family, friends.
Absolutely, and
whatever
then we
come
come
into
back
play.
to the moment we talked about before. When you're playing music just in the moment, I think this can be a moment of where you can completely free. And perhaps this is why I want to create these moments more and more, and I am addicted to these moments.
Mhm. Very good. Is there anything else which is important to you? Talking of I mean, there's quite a lot of I do understand much better now how you think as a musician, how you prepare, what is important to you. Ist irgendwas, was du noch sagen willst?
Revolution!